Now the four Kumaras are describing their great, wonderful experience of seeing the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So they are saying, Tam Tvam Vidama Bhagavan Paramatma Tattvam. Now, after seeing your wonderful transcendental form, we know that you, Bhagavan, Paramatma Tattvam, you are the last word in Atma Tattvam, in knowing the Tattva or the truth or the absolute truth. Satvena Samprati Ratim Rachayantam Esham. Your form and all the different forms in Vaikuntha, the different creation is Vaikuntha. It is all the forms of Shuddha Sattva. You have created all of them out of your love. Ratim Rachayantam Esham. Yatte Anutapa Viditer Dhrida Bhakti Yoger. This form of your, this transcendental form, this variegatedness in the spiritual world cannot be known simply. It can be known only by your mercy. Yatte Anutapa Viditer Dhrida Bhakti Yoger. It can be known by your mercy, and your mercy can be obtained by Dhrida Bhakti Yoger, by performing devotional service unflinchingly. Udgranthayo hridi vidur munayo viragaha. Your form can be perceived, your mercy can be obtained only when by performing unflinching devotional service, the devotee has become completely free from all material contaminations. Udgranthayo hridi, no granthi, no more any attachment in this material world. Munayo viragaha, and when he has become completely detached from this material world, then it is possible. So this is what the four Kumaras are describing, their realization after seeing the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Prabhupada translates it very beautifully. We know you are the Supreme Absolute Truth, Paramatma Tattvam, the personality of Godhead, Bhagavan, who manifests his transcendental form in the uncontaminated mode of pure goodness, Satvena. This eternal, transcendental, eternal form of your personality can be understood only by your mercy. Yatte Anutapa Viditer. How? Through unflinching devotional service, Dhrida Bhakti Yoger. By whom? By great sages, Udgranthayo, whose hearts have been purified in devotional way. Udgranthayo hridi vidur munayo viragaha. So, in the purport, Prabhupada explains some very interesting points, some very wonderful points about Kumara's realizations. First important point which Prabhupada points out is that now, with their experience of Bhagavan, the four sages, the four Kumaras have demonstrated that actually this form, this transcendental form of the Lord as Bhagavan is the last word in absolute truth. See? Because one may wonder that the four Kumaras, they were Brahma Jusham. They were realized in Brahman, and in the last 2 verses, they described about the Paramatma feature also. That the Lord is present in the heart of every living entity as Paramatma. The Lord, Swayam Bhagavan, He expands as localized Paramatma in the heart of every living entity. Right? We saw that actually Yogena Pathai, by the path of yoga, one has to control his mind, his senses, search out Paramatma in the heart. So they have understanding about Paramatma, they were Brahman realized. Now they are seeing Supreme Personality of Godhead face to face. So what is their conclusion? After being Brahman realized, after having the understanding of Paramatma, and now after seeing the Lord face to face, what is their realization? So they are saying, now we know. So it is said here, samprati means now, after seeing this form. Tam tvam vidama, now we know. Vidama means now we have understood, now we have known. What we have known? Bhagavan Paramatma Tattvam. You as Bhagavan, you are Param Atma Tattvam. Atma Tattvam means truth. Absolute truth is called Atma Tattvam. Param Atma Tattvam means you are the last word in absolute truth. You see? So, this is one very important conclusion which Prabhupada explains in this purport by the realization of the 4 Kumaras. Another important point which Prabhupada points out through this realization of the Kumara is that one may argue, how are you saying this is the last word in the absolute truth? Because now the 4 Kumaras are describing Paramatma Tattvam Bhagavan. As Bhagavan, you are the Paramatma Tattvan. So especially impersonalist may argue, atheist may argue, that this Bhagavan which you are seeing, previously he has been described, decorated with garland, decorated with beautiful ornaments. And what is all these things? Even an ordinary man, he is also decorated with flower garland. He can also get decorated with all kinds of jewels. Isn't this material? All these different ornaments and the Rupam of the Lord, the form of the Lord, don't you think this is material? Right. So this is another important point which Prabhupada will describe. No, it is not material. Even though it is decorated beautifully, even though the Lord is wearing flower garland, even though the Lord is wearing all different kinds of ornaments. Just like if you see, in the verse 41, all this was described. Vidyut Shipan Makara Kundala Mandaraha Kandas Mukham Manimat Kiritam. His countenance was distinguished by cheeks that enhanced the beauty of his alligator-shaped pendants. The Lord was wearing alligator-shaped pendants, which outshone lightning. His nose was prominent. His head was covered with a gem-studded crown. The Lord was wearing mukuta. Charming necklace hung between his stout arms, and his neck was adorned with the gem known as Kaustubha. So the Lord was wonderfully decorated. That is how the 4 Kumaras experienced the Lord. So somebody may say, this is all material description. Isn't it? So here, the 4 Kumaras are clarifying, no, don't think that this is a material description of the Lord. All these varieties in the spiritual world, now we have realized the form of the Lord, paraphernalia of the Lord, associates of the Lord whom the Lord is accompanying with. All of them, the creation in the spiritual world, everything is made of Shuddha Sattva. In the material world, everything is made of three modes of material nature. There is contamination. It is called matter, because everything is influenced by three guna. But in the spiritual world, the form of the Lord, paraphernalias of the Lord, associates of the Lord, whatever we see in the spiritual world, everything is Shuddha Sattva. So what are they saying? Sattvena samprati. So this is another important point which realization of the four Kumaras clarifies very clearly. Then, okay, why does the Lord, first of all, we are saying all these are varieties of Shuddha Sattva. Why does the Lord create all these things? The Lord should be full in Himself. Right? Why does He require to create His pastimes? Why does He require to wear beautiful garland? Why does He require to wear beautiful necklace, crown studded? Why the Absolute Truth requires to create all these varieties in the spiritual world? So that also the four Kumaras are explaining. No doubt, the Supreme Lord is the Supreme Enjoyer. He creates for His own enjoyment. But that is not primary purpose. The primary purpose is the Lord creates all these varieties in the spiritual world out of love for His devotees. Ratim rachayantam esham. It is out of ratim. It is out of attraction for His devotees. It is out of love for His devotees. Prabhupada translates, ratim means, Prabhupada says here, Sattvena, by your form of pure goodness, ratim, love of God. So, for the love for His devotees, the Lord creates these spiritual different varieties. Then, okay, the Lord has created different varieties in the spiritual world for His devotees, for the satisfaction of His devotees. That we will see Prabhupada explains that in the purport. Why the Lord has created. It is only for the satisfaction of His devotees. So then one may question, this form of the Lord which the four Kumaras are seeing now, the different varieties which they are seeing now, is it possible that a Jnani with his intelligence, with his mind, with his speculation, with his knowledge, can he also realize all these things? Because factually the four Kumaras were Jnanis. So is it possible that by the strength of their knowledge, by the strength of their intelligence, by the strength of mental speculation, can a Jnani actually realize? Was it possible because of their strength of knowledge? Was it possible because of the strength of their speculation that the four Kumaras realized this uncontaminated Shuddha Sattva form of the Lord, these varieties in the spiritual world? How did they realize? So the four Kumaras are saying, no, it is not by our strength we have realized. It is not by our mental speculation we have realized. How we have realized and how one can realize? Yatte anutapa viditer. This can be realized only by anutapa. Viditer means can be understood. What can be understood? These varieties, this form of the Lord, that the Supreme Lord, Bhagavan, is the last word in absolute truth. By whom this can be realized? This can be realized by anyone who has even the slightest favor of the Supreme Lord. Even little mercy of the Supreme Lord, one can realize. Without mercy, thousands of lifetime, bahunam janmanam, even thousands of lifetime one may go on speculating, one cannot realize this. He may realize Brahman, no doubt. But this wonderful form of the Lord, these varieties in the spiritual world cannot be realized without the mercy of the Lord. Then one will think, okay, so it is by the mercy of the Lord one can realize. Now mercy of the Lord can be had by meditation. Mercy of the Lord can be had by cultivating knowledge. How can one obtain the mercy of the Lord? So then the four Kumaras are saying, no, Jnanis are not the patras of mercy of the Lord. Yogis are not the patra of the mercy of the Lord. It is only by engaging in unflinching devotional service one can obtain the mercy of the Lord. Dhrida bhakti yoger. Dhrida means unflinching. Bhakti yoger. Not jnana yoger. Not ashtanga yoger. They cannot become the recipient of the mercy of the Lord. It is only the devotee of the Lord who is performing unflinching devotional service. How does one obtain this mercy of the Lord? By performing unflinching devotional service. So they clarify that only when, by performing this unflinching devotional service, when they have become simultaneously detached from material attractions, udgranthayo, we are having a lot of granthis in this material world, one after another, so many different attachments. Only when our heart, hridi, has become udgranthayo, it has become free from all kinds of material attachments, then it is possible to obtain the mercy of the Lord. Udgranthayo hridi vidur munayo viragaha. And when one has become viraga, no more raga in this material world. So Prabhupada translates that this transcendental, eternal form of your personality can be understood only by your mercy through unflinching devotional service by great sages whose hearts have been purified in the devotional way, whose hearts have become uncontaminated, no more attachment, viragaha, not interested in material life, then only it is possible. So price has to be paid. Not that I am performing devotional service, I will be able to obtain this mercy of the Lord. Mercy of the Lord can be obtained only when we have become detached from this material world, only when we have no more attraction in this material world, then the mercy of the Lord can be obtained. So, these are some of the very important points which Prabhupada is mentioning. Prabhupada describes in little bit more length about this Shuddha Sattva form of the Lord, because one may wonder, here it is said actually Sattvena, and there is a possibility that somebody may interpret this form of the Lord is in goodness, isn't it? So it is just in goodness. So one may worship for some time this form of the Lord, and then one has to give up even this form and go beyond to impersonalism. Somebody may think like this. But actually, when the word Sattvena, here it is utilized about Vaikuntha and about the form of the Lord, one must understand it refers to Shuddha Sattva. Just few verses before, in the verse 15, it was very clearly described, all these varieties in the spiritual world are not of three modes of material nature. They are not of Sattva Guna, they are not of Rajo Guna or Tamo Guna. None of them. It is out of Shuddha Sattva Guna. When there is no contamination of Sattva Guna also, no contamination of Rajo Guna, no contamination of Tamo Guna, that is called as Shuddha Sattva. So, material existence means Triguna, spiritual existence means pure Sattva Guna. If all of you remember, there is a verse spoken by Lord Shiva when he describes about his devotion to the Supreme Lord. So he says, Sattvam Vishuddham Vasudeva Shabditam. He says, only when one has completely come to the platform of Sattvam Vishuddham, not just Shuddham, Vishuddham, completely uncontaminated mode of pure goodness. So Sattvam Vishuddham means it is called pure goodness. Then what happens? Vasudeva Shabditam. Then he can experience Vasudeva platform. So that's how you will see Prabhupada explains when Lord Krishna took birth in the house of Devaki and Vasudeva. So Prabhupada explains there, the Lord appeared in the mind of Vasudeva. Why? Because he was on the platform of Shuddha Sattva. That platform is called Vasudeva platform, where one can see Vasudeva. So on Vasudeva platform, where Vasudeva and Devaki, when they were on that platform, the Lord appeared in the mind of Vasudeva and later on transferred to the womb of Devaki. So Lord Shiva is saying, Sattvam Vishuddham Vasudeva Shabditam. It is only on the platform of Vasudeva, Lord Vasudeva is experienced. And actually if we see, just few verses back, as I said in the 15th verse, it was very clearly explained. I'll just read. Yatra chadhyaha puman asate Bhagavan shabda gocharaha sattvam vishtibhya virajam swanam no mridayan vrishaha. So Prabhupada translates that. In Vaikuntha planets is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the original person and who can be understood through the Vedic literature. So, Yatra cha Adhyaha Puman. Puman means personality. Adhyaha means original personality. Who is that? Bhagavan. In those Vaikuntha planets, the original personality of Godhead, Bhagavan, resides. Who is that Supreme Lord? How he can be understood? Shabda Gocharaha. He can be understood only through the Vedic literature. Then, how is his existence in the spiritual world? He is full of uncontaminated mode of goodness. no place for passion or ignorance. What is that word which is used? Sattvam vishtibhyaha. Vishtibhya means filled with, full of. Virajam means uncontaminated, completely pure. So, the word sattvam, when it is utilized here, it should not be misunderstood to be sattva guna of the material world. In the material world, even sattva guna is contaminated. But in the spiritual world, it is pure goodness. Sattva guna, when it is said there, it means pure goodness. One more verse we will see, and after that we will stop. This is a prayer by Dhruva Maharaj. So Dhruva Maharaj, in his prayer, he explains the difference between the form of the Lord and ordinary form. Because after his meditation on the Lord, within 6 months, by the mercy of the Lord, he was able to see the Lord face to face, just like the 4 Kumaras are seeing. So Dhruva Maharaj is also explaining that actually this is not some ordinary form. It is Vyatarikta Ase. Vyatarikta means it is different form, differently situated. This is not ordinary form. It is not the other forms which I have been seeing in the material world. So he explains how it is different. So he says, Tvam Nitya Mukta. My dear Lord, your form is Nitya Mukta, not contaminated by any modes of material nature. When are we called Baddha? When we are in 3 modes of material nature. When do we become Mukta? When we become free from 3 modes of material nature. So one should understand, only when we become free from 3 modes, we can see the form of the Lord. How it can be of modes of material nature? We ourselves have to become free from 3 modes, then only we can see the form of the Lord. So how is there possibility that the form of the Lord can be made of 3 modes of material nature? So he is saying, Tvam Nitya Mukta, the form of the Lord is not contaminated by 3 modes. It is ever liberated form, not contaminated, not bound by 3 modes of material nature. Not only that, Parishuddha, it is completely purified, or it is pure goodness form. Vibhuddha Atma, your form is filled with complete knowledge. Satchitananda Vigraha. You see? Our form is not this material form which is contaminated by 3 modes, not filled with knowledge. Even in our liberated form, we are not full of knowledge. We can know only what knowledge the Lord gives us. Isn't it? The Lord is unlimited. His glories are unlimited. Even Lord Ananta cannot know the Lord fully. Where is the question? We can know the Lord fully. Isn't it? So we are not completely full of knowledge. But the Lord is Vibhuddha Atma, completely filled with knowledge. Kutastha. Kutastha means unchangeable. We always keep on changing our form. Isn't it? These forms are temporary. The Lord form is unchangeable. It is permanent form. Adi Purusho. And you are that original personality of Godhead. Adi Purusho Bhagavams Tradhishaha. Tradhisha means you are the master of 3 modes of material nature. Yat buddhi avasthitam akhanditaya swadrishtaya. With your unbroken glance. You see, I can keep a watch on you for some time. After some time, what are you doing? I have no idea. Right? But the Lord is constantly keeping glance. Akhanditaya swadrishtaya. With unbroken glance, He is the witness of everything happening in the material world. So we can escape each other, but we cannot escape the glance of the Supreme Lord. Not only activities, He is the witness of even our status of our intelligence. What are we contemplating? What are we thinking? What I am going to do next, He is aware. You see. Yat buddhi avasthitam. What is the situation of our buddhi avasthitam? What is the stages of our intellectual activities? Akhanditaya swadrishtaya. He is aware even of all those things. And then, Drishtha sthitav adhimako vyatarikta ase. The Supreme Lord, He is the maintainer, sthitav, and He is the enjoyer, adhimakho, of everything in this material world. And then He clarifies, this form is not. Do not think, okay, now the Lord is the maintainer of the material world. So He is in touch. When we have to maintain our family, we are always in touch with our family. When we maintain something, we are also entangled in that, isn't it? But the Supreme Lord, even though He is the maintainer, even though He is the enjoyer of all sacrifices, Vyatarikta ase, He is untouched. He is still aloof from this material world. And Prabhupada explains, Vyatarikta ase also means He is differently situated. He is not one of the living entities. He is different from all other forms. So we can very clearly see what Prabhupada is describing in the purport very beautifully, that all these different forms of the Lord, all these different varieties in the spiritual world, they're all Shuddha Sattva, no contamination of material modes, and the Lord creates them out of love for the satisfaction of His devotees. I'll just read that portion very beautifully. Prabhupada says that. The impersonalist may argue, since the Supreme Personality of Godhead was so nicely decorated, He was therefore not the absolute truth. But here it is confirmed, all variegatedness of the absolute platform is constituted of Shuddha Sattva, pure goodness. In the material world, any quality, goodness, passion or ignorance is contaminated. Even the quality of goodness here in the material world is not free from tinges of passion and ignorance. But in the transcendental world, only pure goodness, without any tinge of passion or ignorance exists. Therefore, the form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and His variegated pastime and paraphernalia are all pure Sattva Guna. And then Prabhupada is saying, why does the Lord exhibit them eternally in the spiritual world? Eternally His paraphernalias are there. Eternally His pastimes are there. Eternally His glories are there. Eternally His form is there. Why does the Lord exhibit all of them? Such variegatedness in pure goodness is exhibited eternally by the Lord for the satisfaction of the devotee. The devotee does not want to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead in voidism or impersonalism. In one sense, absolute transcendental variegatedness is meant only for the devotees. So actually it is only for the devotees the Lord has created this variegatedness. Of course, one should know, the Lord has created them by His internal energy. Everything in the spiritual world is by the internal energy of the Lord. Everything in the material world is by the external energy of the Lord. So we can understand here that these variegatedness are created by the Lord out of mercy for His devotees, for the satisfaction of His devotees, to give pleasure to His devotees. And one can understand all of these only through the mercy of the Lord, as it is explained here. So we'll stop with this. Granthra Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada.